Hey guys, I'm back. So today we're gonna have a little harmonious mind chat while I do a makeup look. So let's get into it. I hope you guys are doing well. Keeping your eyes open, planning things for yourself. Things are really about to change, forever changing they are. But this is a bit different, these times we're in. So this is like my primer. It's a rice protein. And this is just the, mattify. I didn't really want to use a full-on primer. So I guess I'll start with the eyes first. Look, I'm no professional makeup artist, okay? I used to be really into makeup and really do a full face, but we'll see. I may just do the eye look, maybe with a little concealer. I can't be bothered. I just can't sometimes with the makeup. I want to just do it and go about my business. I don't want to do all the steps, for like a full face beat. So okay, so today's topic is, how does this society and this way of life promote self-loathing? Whew. And particularly I'm talking about Western society that is based on European values, started off European ideals. I'm gonna flip this. So how does the society promote self-loathing? So first I'm gonna get into materialism and resourcism and GDP versus GNP. In other nations, they don't measure, well, they probably do measure. I read an article, they probably do measure GDP, but they also measure GNH. GNH, gross national happiness. But here in the States, they only measure mainly gross domestic product. That's what they GDP. And of course, they don't care about our happiness, Specifically, I'm going to be speaking to the Black community, So when it comes to GMP, I keep saying GMP, GNH, versus GDP, there is this, fleeting, this is a consumer based. Western societies are very consumer based. There's a lot of consumerism. And the reason why is because there's materialism and resourcism that we participate in, That's why this whole depopulation thing is being pushed, because resourcism, they've exploited resources. They've exploited Africa and, Asia and mainly Africa highly. And also, they're getting their resources from South America as well. They've, exploited these nations. And, even a few years ago, they were saying, there's not going to be enough resources to support the world population. And they continued on with this materialism and this resourcism, and it's about these tangible items, and it's done in a way where it's not renewable, it's not recyclable, and it's not sustainable. So when it comes to this, promoting self-loathing and this idea of like non-fulfillment, which is like you have to really push away from the system and ideals to get to fulfillment, because with G&H and GDP, the difference here is there's this increase and a much higher GDP because of so much material, so much tangible items, and they're a bit connected to this idea of temporary happiness. So then there's this fleeting happiness that you get from just buying these items, buying clothes, buying purses, or buying electronics and stuff. There's this fleeting happiness that's tied into resourcism and materialism. And yeah, so that's one thing for sure. I should have got my my beauty blender isn't clean, and the Laura Mercier velvet thing, poofer thing, that thing isn't clean either. So I was like, I'm just gonna use my fingers, Okay, hopefully I can do this look quick, because talking about doing makeup, that can be a long thing. Do I want to do my other areas just for like a flawless look? I guess I will. Yeah, so that's one thing. But versus in other nations, people are finding happiness and connecting with people in their village, connecting with people in the community, being outside, making a meal together. In these places where, there's that high resourcism, high materialism, high consumerism, they are not experiencing this fleeting happiness because it's not in tandem with, those things. They're outside, they're enjoying life, they're doing activities, it's very communal based, in these areas, in these places where they did the surveys. Well, I think it was not survey, but the study. So that's one thing. That's a big thing, I'll say. The fact that we're very consumer based, and that's one big thing. The fact that we're consumer based. And you even see it now, because it's like with the pandemic, that, there was this bit of shock and this bit of shookness when it came to people not being able to consume their products they needed, or consume the products that they wanted, hoarding products and stuff. It was like, you kind of see how developed nations really do depend on consumerism, resourcism, and materialism. You see that with this whole thing. So you see that majorly. So let's get into the blueprint and conditioning. The blueprint and conditioning promotes self-loathing because you're not being your free self necessarily. You're not allowing things to be free-flowing, and we're already, as Black people, as African people, we're already out of our environment. We're already in a place that we're necessarily not supposed to be. You know, we didn't bring ourselves here. So that's one thing. 1 second. Did I bring it? Here it is. So that's one thing. So when it comes to the blueprint and conditioning, we were being taught that, you know, especially the boomers and above were taught, you know, taught to survive. And, you know, millennials and Gen Z, we don't want to survive. We want to thrive and live an appropriate quality of life, you know? And that's not what the generations before were taught. You know, they were taught, get a good job that has benefits, get a good job to be secure, and, you know, don't stay in line, don't upset nobody. You know, that's what they were taught. So I'm about to add a bit more liner on the waterline. Yeah, get a good job, you know, do something that's secure, you know. And in this pursuit of doing so, a lot of people didn't pursue their dreams. A lot of people didn't pursue their necessarily their purposes. They didn't. You know, whenever most people that you see that went against the grain, they walked in their purpose, they pursued their purpose and their dreams all in one. But people who follow the blueprint, they're doing what they're doing to be safe within the system, and, you know, to necessarily survive but not thrive. You know, you don't have to necessarily work 40 plus hours a week and work overtime just to pay bills and then get this 401k, get this, get that, retire at a late age. Like, all of these things that go with the blueprint and security, you spend a chunk of your life working and not enjoying life, you know? And, you know, working for somebody else, saving up money to enjoy later on in your life. And time and later on is not promised to us. So the time is always now. So, yeah, so that's one way. Now I'm gonna get into necessarily education. You know, now in society, for years and years, you know, people, and it's the system, it's indoctrination, it's these Europeans who've infiltrated the world. And, you know, the states, you know, South America, Central America, you know, Europe, even in Africa, you know, they've infiltrated, you know, they were serious about that world hegemony. They were serious. And they infiltrated, and now when it comes to today, it's like people think the only way to be secure and necessarily do well in life is to get a degree. And I mean, they're not teaching us our history. They're not teaching that in grade school. They're not teaching it in higher education. It's not until you get to college where they're necessarily trying to promote higher level thinking, but you have to really be brilliant to really connect the dots in a way that brings the whole picture together. And I think a lot of people are doing that now, but it's like, why, if you were in college for years before that, why did it take now? This should have been something that they were necessarily promoting before in a way that was holistic and not brain busting, because you have to necessarily be there in your mind to connect the dots when it comes to that. Because it's not necessarily, I don't know what word to use, but it's not done so in a way that, they're not straight up, basically. They're talking in code to you. And if not, they're not all telling the whole truth. And you know how every white person loves, whenever, like, in my political philosophy class years ago, they love to talk about Martin Luther King and how him being docile. They don't talk about the Martin Luther King that was like, all right, let's go for separatism. They always talk about the Martin Luther King that was docile and for intersectionality and then for integration and continuing to ask white people for something they never gave us, So that's something that they talk about in college, and that kind of furthers the boxing in of your mind. So that's what I'm saying here. It doesn't necessarily promote any mind opening and any, breakthrough and full circle thought moments at all. It does not. So when it comes to school and education, it's like, yeah, people, they're like, oh, once you get that degree, they can't take that from you. I mean, this idea of a piece of paper being so much is it's something that the white man has placed in the society. It's like, you have to understand, this is a psychology. Way of life is a psychology. Everything is a psychology when it comes down to marketing, the TV, getting you to buy things, getting you to do things, getting you to acquiesce, get in control, the social contract is all psychology. And psychology necessarily in Western society, they teach you that it stemmed from philosophy. And you could say so, but psychology has been here forever, and it's in the way of life, in the way things are done. 1 second. Yeah, so trying to necessarily follow, back to the self-loathing part, how does it, promote that? You're continuing, like, a lot of people get depressed in college because you're trying to, there's so many different things. One, you can be trying to make money and trying to be, the best student, and also trying to participate in extracurricular activities to still be a human being, to still be a person, it promotes this self-loathing because even when it comes to the education system, I'm gonna even say like K through 12 or like, high school, whatever, the way, even like Europeans said this back in like the 70s, I think it was a Gestalt therapist or a Gestalt psychologist said, the way they have education here is not so great because it's like this overload of material, and nobody ever remembers. After you take your tests, people don't remember the things they learned, and that's a problem. People are not being taught to retain things, and people are not being taught in a manner where it's, healthy for your brain, and it facilitates, retaining information, and facilitates, applying it, application, and, holding on to it, So, yeah, back to what I'm saying about college. And, you know, say you're in college and, you know, you're trying to do all these things, and somehow it's like really hard to find the balance with, you know, trying to do all that. It's because you're trying to follow a blueprint that's not indigenous to your people, that's not indigenous to early civilization, and that's not really for us, you know? And even non-black people have been depressed throughout college and get depressed and just really go through. And just imagine like trying to pay your own bills too, and like you got kids and stuff. That's even harder. And sometimes it's like you're in a merry-go-round. It's like you're in this merry-go-round of trying to get by, to get something that won't have you getting by, but kind of will have you getting by, because it depends on what you're going to do with your degree. It's quite a lot, you know. But it promotes this self-loathing because you're pushing yourself in a way that you don't necessarily have to push yourself so hard, you know. It's not natural to be trying to do all that. It's not. And, you know, back in the day, it was like you knew your purpose, you knew what you were supposed to be doing. You would go to the guider, the counselor, to aid you in that, not go spend thousands of dollars for a certificate, you know, a piece of paper, a degree that says, you know, my capabilities, and, you know, I use this to now bring out the skills, and it's now valid, you know, because you can bring out the skills without necessarily paying thousands of dollars. You know, you can bring out the skills without necessarily running your pockets dry. But it kind of like this, it validates, you know, your expertise. And it's like literally sometimes you're just doing it for the piece of paper, and it's no good on the heart, it's no good on the soul, it's no good on the body, you know. Just to validate, just to get a job, you know. And another thing, it's like, okay, now you are an expert in this. It's like nobody can have well-rounded knowledge and speak on something. It's like you have to be an expert, you have to be a specialist in this to even pursue it. And it's like, if you really adhere to these things and acquiesce to these things, it's no good for you. It's no good for you. It's no good. So now, if you really wanted to get into college and really break it down, like you have to do the research on your own. Do the research on. I advocate for people seeking enlightenment and seeking education, so do the research on your own. Even these institutions that we long to go to have been founded on unethical principles. You know, before they had I forgot the name of the board, the Institutional Research Board, the IRB. Before they had that, it was tons of unethical things going on, even in slavery times. Like, you know, I don't know which school, is it Harvard or Yale? I don't know, guys, I don't know. You gotta look that up, but one of the, you know, one of the Ivy League schools, or maybe two of them, you know, are founded, like gynecology, basically founded upon picking at black women. And, you know, in an unethical way. Of course, it was not, you know, they didn't give consent, they didn't have anesthesia. And that's the most disturbing thing as a woman to know. Like, gynecology is founded on such a thing. You know, picking at women and black women. Whew, Lord. So, yeah, just look up, do your research. You'll see. But, you know, it promotes this self-loathing because it's not free-flowing when you're trying to go along with the blueprint that doesn't necessarily serve you. There's so many hurdles, you know? So, oh yeah, back to what I was saying about, you know, expertise. And you have the idea that you literally have to be an expert and have that piece of paper to validate having well-rounded knowledge and having studied something and you know, really studied something. You can't speak on it unless you got that PhD in it, or, you know. And it shouldn't be that, you know, it shouldn't be such. And that's just another thing that promotes self-loathing. It's not really allowing you to be free-flowing. The blueprint, you know, really trying. And I think, you know, when you're unaware of how much you can thrive and have a much better quality of life, because a lot of people who've never lived outside of the U.S., especially who haven't lived on the continent, it's like, you know, they only know this way of life. They don't know a way of life where you're literally worried about health insurance, medical insurance, and, you know, buying land and paying taxes on it. You can buy land and it be yours, and that's it. That's it. So people really need to do their best to be open-minded and understand that this way of life is not the only way of life. And you don't have to subscribe to it. You know, like the fact that a bachelor's now in New York, I saw like $15 minimum wage for a bachelor's. Are you serious? Like, just think about it. You're going to school, spending 4 years of your life to get a degree, a piece of paper. I'm not downplaying it. I'm just saying, just think about it systematically. You're going to get a degree. Now, sometimes that doesn't even do you any good, because now you have to get a master's or a PhD, depending on what your career choice is, you know? And you get that, and they're telling you they want to pay you $15 after minimum wage, after you spent thousands and thousands of dollars for that education that you got to pay loans or pay off loans for. So think about it. It's like, are you serious? $15? Get the hell out of here. That's the system. That's just the European way of life, and we keep trying to live it and thinking that we're gonna be happy and that we're gonna thrive. And yeah, there are people that thrive and they bust their knees and scrape their knees and bust their tail, yeah. But you don't have to necessarily do that in a society that is indigenous and for you, you know? Just remember that. I was taking a drinks early in the morning because it was just beautiful out here, you know. It was very quiet. You could just hear the birds so clearly. So, if you like this, just let me know and I'll do it again. And even when it comes to like having your own business, like if you just think about it, there's so many things in society that have been put in place to hold us back. They're on code, and it is a code. You know, when it comes to getting a house, starting a business, paying taxes. You can literally do these things, you know, to get your life together and it still be some unnecessary problems you're facing. You think that's just the way it is, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. It was put in place to be that way. That's something that people really have to understand. It was put in place to be that way. So I'm going to come back when I'm done because this video is long. It's long now. And yeah, talking about doing your makeup it can be quite long. So I'm gonna do this, come back when it's done. Okay?